thank you for your patience while we're getting started here. We are making 2 recipes today. So I have a couple of rules for meal prep. When I'm prepping something, why make 1 when you can make 2? Make 1 and freeze the second portion. And the second is that if I'm making 2 recipes, I like to overlap ingredients so I'm not cooking as much. So for today, I am making a barbacoa taco bake in the crock pot, and I'm making an egg casserole, and I'm only gonna show you making 1. I already have a lot of food in my freezer, so I'm not really working on filling my freezer. This is more just to demonstrate what we're doing, but I will tell you where I overlapped on these 2 recipes. One is onions. They both call for onions. I do not always chop onions. In fact, I prefer not to. I like to buy the pre-chopped frozen onions. It's about $1 for 12 ounces of diced onions, chopped onions. This is perfect for the recipes we're making today. So I sauteed these in a pan, just that's one and done, very easy. And both recipes called for cheese. So I have a big bowl of grated cheese. Now, if you are one of my clients that's working with me on stubborn weight, I know there's a few of you in boot camp that's coming up, and I am working with a couple of you one-on-one. We're gonna skip the dairy for you. So if you're having this, you're gonna make it without dairy at home. Generally speaking, I'm probably gonna end up more on the not dairy side. Today we're using it to kind of bulk up these recipes and just to show you what we can do. So these are freezer-friendly recipes. I'm going to be putting the crock pot meal directly into my crock pot because this is what we're having for dinner tonight. And I'm going to be putting the breakfast casserole. I'm gonna go ahead and make it and then freeze it, but I have frozen this without baking it first, and it's been okay, but the cream does separate a little bit. I kind of think this breakfast casserole turns out better when you cook it and then freeze it if you're going to freeze it. The great thing about these is tons of leftovers, and that breakfast casserole will be awesome for the entire week. So if you make this on a Saturday, you could have 5 days of great breakfast for you. If you're making it for your family, you might want to double it. And if you are wanting extra servings, you might want to triple it. Same with this barbacoa recipe. So we're going to start with the crock pot, and this is so simple, so easy. What I did is I took my barbacoa beef that I had made previously. I had doubled the recipe and frozen half. That's what I do lots of nights when I'm making dinner. We have taco meat in there. I've got quinoa, brown rice, diced chicken, lots of stuff that I just portion some of it and stick it in the freezer. So I have an easier recipe beginning for the next time I make anything with it. And that's kind of what we covered yesterday on day 3 of the meal prep challenge, was making proteins. So I have this barbacoa, but this will also work with taco meat. So I also have some frozen cooked taco meat in my freezer. If you freeze your meat, I froze it with taco seasoning, but I've done it, I have lots of plain cooked meat too. So with this, if you were going to do the taco meat, I would just thaw it, and I thawed this beef barbacoa, which is delicious. I'll have to share the recipe. And I just put this on the stovetop to simmer. I thawed it, put it into simmer, added a can of diced tomatoes, and now we're ready to use it. So I'm going to go ahead and just scoop the meat directly into the crock pot. This recipe is so simple. And just kind of spread it around the bottom so it gets all over. Okay, then I'm going to add a little bit of these diced onions that I sauteed. I'm just gonna use my fingers for that and spread them out. Then I'm going to add some low-carb tortillas. Again, if you're a stubborn loser, you might not be eating gluten, you might not be eating dairy. If you're not, this is a very simple, family-friendly casserole. Works great with taco meat, like I said, but I do 2 tortillas and just cover that layer. Then I go in again with the cooked barbacoa with tomatoes. I try to get some of the juices dripped out a little bit, or strained a little bit, before I add them in. And then I spread it all over. It's kind of hard to see. I'll try to show you. In the crock pot, I just spread it over the tortillas. So there's a layer all over the top of the tortillas. I'll add a little bit more onion, which the onion is totally optional, but it goes in the recipe, so it's nice that I have it for both the egg casserole and this recipe. And then, oh, I almost forgot. Then I get some cheese here, and if you are not eating dairy, just skip the cheese. That's totally fine. This, if you were doing it without the tortillas, I do Wonder Wraps. That would still be so good. And it's kind of like an enchilada casserole. My favorite thing to make this with is actually taco meat. funny story, this barbacoa is delicious and I absolutely love it. But I have a teenager who's learning to drive. She has her permit and she wanted to drive herself today to school. So we left way early, and before I left, knowing I was gonna be meal prepping with you guys, I thought, oh, I better go ahead and pull out the ground beef. But I was in a total rush and I pulled out the barbacoa instead, and we're being creative and just rolling with the barbacoa. So we've got another layer of tortillas. Now, we're not having all of these tortillas in one serving for one person. You're gonna have a square of this, and that's why it's okay. One square adds up to about one tortilla. So that's why we're doing it that way. You're not gonna be eating, you know, 6 low-carb tortillas at once. We don't wanna do that. We wanna stick to about one once a week, which is what I see gets the best results for most people if they need to have tortillas. With the Wonder Wraps, you could go ahead and just put more in there and you'd be fine. So this is my last layer. There is some meat left in the pot, but I'm actually gonna save it for a snack for myself right now because I am hungry. And I have a little too much meat for this recipe, so that works out well. So this is an S-friendly meal, and I'm gonna do another handful of cheese. And one last layer of tortillas with more cheese on top. Now again, this is a heavy S. This is very family friendly, but may not be as stubborn weight friendly. So one more time, I know you heard me, but if you are one of my stubborn weight mamas, you're skipping the cheese. It's still delicious, and using Wonder Wraps instead. So I'll do a little bit more cheese on top of this, and this is done. This is a simple recipe. This just took me a few minutes to put together. So easy, very delicious, and I'm gonna cook this on high for about 3 hours. Now we're gonna come to our breakfast casserole. I have this pre-sprayed. I'm gonna slide this pan out of the way. Magic, sort of. I have this pre-sprayed 9x13 dish, and what I've done for this recipe is I had sausage. You can pre-cook sausage. You wanna look for low to no sugar, under 2 grams of carbs per serving. I really look for no sugar added sausage. I cooked this. You can cook this in single serve bags and freeze it. Again, if you're making sausage, make a lot of sausage and freeze multiple bags of it that you can come back to. But I'm gonna go ahead and just pour this in here. This is the breakfast casserole from the Trim Healthy Mama cookbook. And I like to make this one. It's pretty simple, pretty tasty. And I love the flavor of the onion cream mixture that they have you make. It's really good. But this is from the cookbook, not from Trim Healthy Table. So I've got sausage, I've got cheese. Again, if you are a stubborn weight mama, just skip the cheese. And if you are trying to reduce inflammation, skip the cheese. Then we've got 8 eggs whisked with salt and pepper. And I'm just, hold on, I'm actually not gonna do anything with that yet. I'm gonna add the onion and the cream mixture. I put way more onion. They say like a 1/4 cup of onion, and I've got like half the bag here just because I really like the flavor of it. You don't have to do this much onion mixture if you don't want to. But it's basically onion, chicken broth, heavy cream, glucki in a pan. You just kind of meld all those flavors together, get it mixed up and thick and creamy, and then you're good. So I'm gonna put a little bit of this in here. I'm not gonna use all of it, even though I'd like to, because that's a lot of onion. Then we're going to take the whisked eggs with salt and pepper and just kind of pour it over the top. And then I'll mix it together. I know that the cookbook has different instructions for this. I know, they want you to mix things in a different order. I've just been making this for so long. I really started just doing my own thing with this, and my apologies if I'm doing it out of order and you wanna make this breakfast casserole at home and you're looking in the cookbook saying, what in the world is this? It's just slightly different. I'm doing things in a different order, but it's still gonna taste the same. And there's more onions in mine, but that's the only difference, okay? So I've got this mixed up. I'm gonna add some cheese to the top. My kids love this one. Again, this is pretty heavy in dairy, lots of cheese, heavy S. You could totally skip the cheese and it would still be delicious. And in fact, a couple months ago, I made this breakfast casserole and I just sprinkled nutritional yeast on the top. I didn't add any cheese whatsoever. It was amazing. So now I've got a breakfast casserole. Again, if I weren't doing this for a video in under, 12 minutes, I would double these and freeze the second pour. Like I would have kept the meat frozen, but But if you're making one thing, make two. If you're making a protein, double that protein. If you're making something that you can save for later, do that. It will save you a lot of time in the long run. So this is day 4 of the prep challenge. I'm using the meat that I prepared previously to make a good meal or 2 good meals. And if you can do even more than that, that's awesome too.